And we are live. Welcome into the Fieldhouse Files live post-game show here following the Pacers Game 7 win here today over the Knicks. The final 130-109, an offensive clip that we've never seen before in the NBA postseason as the Pacers shot a NBA best, I guess, 67.1%. An outstanding first quarter, got things started with a 39-point outburst. They did it at a remarkable 76% clip. And so now they are moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals that begins on Tuesday at Boston. So the team will go directly to Boston, not coming back here to Indy. No point in doing that with so little time to turn around and now prepare for their next opponent, because keep in mind, the Boston Celtics have been done since I think last Wednesday. So they've had a lot of time to rest, relax, take it easy, get a little practice time in, but mostly sit back and watch how this game, this series unfolded while just kind of chilling at home. Appreciate everyone jumping on here with me. We'll cover a lot on this, starting with the Pacers' depth. What did I tell you at the start of this series? It was going to be a war of attrition in this series. Would it be the physicality of the series that wears down the Pacers? Nope, it was not. Instead, it was the constant injuries that unfortunately minimized what the Knicks were able to do starting early on in this series with OG Anunoby and then Mitchell Robinson. And then later on, Josh Hart dealt with that abdominal strain that cost him much of time in Game 6 and also here in Game 7. Still played, 36 minutes today, 10 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists for Josh Hart, despite that. An incredibly remarkable pain tolerance, clearly from him, that he was able to deal with. But this has been an incredible season. And that's another thing maybe we'll touch on during this live stream here. Just so many things that have been a surprise this season. So many growth moments, teaching points, highs and lows, going with, the in-season tournament run and how the Pacers surprised everyone. And then Tyrese's injury that kept him out for 10 games, that really slowed this team down. And, would he even play 65 games this year? Would he even qualify for All-NBA? Yes, and yes. Then the Pacers acquired a player they had been after for a while in Pascal Siakam. And look, a game like this is exactly why you brought him in. Same thing with Game 6. He scored 20-plus points in 4 of the last 5 games, only had one dip down there here in the latter part. And so after the Pacers lost the first 2 games at Madison Square Garden, they won 4 of the next 5 games, one loss being at MSG. Back in Game 5. Then they finished off the Knicks. The Knicks just needed one more win over the final 2 games, and the Pacers wouldn't have it, ultimately coming away with the wins in Game 6 and Game 7, and now advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. I wrote my post-game story at fieldhousefiles.com. You can check that out while I'm talking as well, or make sure you're subscribed so that you get all my stories coming up this week and moving forward about the team and facing Boston. Brad Stevens, the president of the Boston Celtics, you got that great storyline and a whole lot more. So let's go to the comments here before I give you some more of my thoughts about so many different things that went on throughout this game. But Pacers depth, Tyrese, or starting with Pascal Siakam, start 11 of the Pacers' first 21 points. And then we saw Tyrese Halliburton do something he likes to do. Remember, he loves battles. He loves confrontation. He's a WWE guy. And so there was this fan sitting courtside, 6 seats to the right of the broadcast booth, and they were getting into it, and that fired up Tyrese. I remember the second game of the season being there at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse and the same thing happening. And ultimately, Tyrese and the Pacers rallied. Tyrese got the win, and then at the end of the game, he wasn't dressed up in that sweater that he came out in. Nope, he had something ready for this one because, again, he loves moments, he loves characters, he loves drama. Post-game, he had a black black hoodie with a photo of Reggie Miller doing the choke sign and just on cue. Like, that's so Tyrese. So really impressive, no doubt about that. Hey, appreciate it. Shout out for that contribution there, Quamino. I appreciate that. I definitely need some Starbucks. You've been looking at the bags under my eyes. Shout out to you for that $10 push here. I appreciate that. Make sure you're subscribed as well to Fieldhouse Files Carnage says, let's go. Yep. A lot of excitement here in Indianapolis. And something you can all look forward to, especially if you're in Indy, is what we have coming up next weekend. As on Saturday, you'll have game 3 at the Fieldhouse. Sunday, the Indianapolis 500. Monday, game 4 at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And in between then, we got some Fever and Caitlin Clark beginning coming up starting tomorrow night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, as they will host the Connecticut Sun. Then they go out west. So they won't have home games between then and now, but after Monday. So a lot to get to. Billy Osborne says Pacers have become a better team this series, sent a battered Knicks team home. The better team won. No doubt. And it can be both. That's the thing I want to stress here is you have a combination of the Pacers playing well, responding well after a couple of losses to get the series started. There's so many ways where you could be disappointed, right, with the way they started and falling behind 2-0. And remember that officiating in game 1, and the coaching staff kind of quietly sat on it. Then after game 2, Rick Carlisle, you think has no problem with that $35,000 fine the NBA hit him with. After that, yeah, of course, that's no big deal now. You got to play the game. It's a little gamesmanship here. And after that, I don't really remember any significant problems in terms of officiating and how things were called. Sure, there was going to be a few missed calls both ways after that, but that was a telling point. The way in which the Pacers responded in this series taught us a lot. And a lot about this season is about the growth. It's the teaching moments. You really like for Benedict Mathurin to be out there. You would really like for Jarris Walker to be out there. Those, unfortunately, aren't things that are happening right now. But in the process, I mean, my favorite thing to watch throughout the playoffs has been TJ McConnell, a guy that Rick Carlisle had out of his rotation to begin the season, a guy that was getting DNP's coaches' decisions, meaning he's not playing purely a decision made by the bench in January. And now he's the Pacers' most invaluable player, what he's been able to accomplish. I mean, the little things that he's doing has been so special. And that was the turning point that I referenced in my At the Buzzer column. The Knicks had it down to 7 points, right? It was 77-70, I believe it was. And then when McConnell was inserted, they went on a 16-4 run. He brought the energy, made a couple shots, had that great McConnell steal past Nesmith for the and one. I thought TJ, again, helped change the game. And a point where the Knicks really started to threaten there, middle of the third quarter. They had cut it down again to 7. And once the Pacers got it up to a double-digit lead, they never relented, and it stayed a blowout after that. So that was really well done by TJ McConnell and the Pacers. That was a decent game. Yeah, you think, Michael B? Well said. MK Sinks, good to see you on here. You're undefeated and showing up for these post-game press conferences, or not press conferences, post-game live shows. I appreciate that. He says, loved everything about it today and how they didn't let New York run in the third completely take over. Going to keep this streak going. Yeah, just reference that third quarter streak even before I saw your comment. That was what was huge there, because you saw the Knicks score 5 in a row to end this half. And you've seen this in other games this series as well, but you saw them 5-0 to end the half, and then they started the second half, I think, 10-2. So it was a 15-2 Knicks run. Rick Carlisle called timeout a little while later. He inserted TJ McConnell back into the game, and that kind of settled them down. And I do want to touch on that too, by the way. I was very curious how this team would start. Would they be antsy? Would they be too fired up, too giddy, too emotional? They were not. I thought it was the best start. Forget the points and the shooting. Like, that was obvious. 76% and 39 points in the first quarter. That part was obvious. But what stood out to me was their outwardly display. And the Knicks had a good early start, right? We saw OG Anunoby knock down a 3 and then I think make a layup. And that was basically all he could contribute in 5 minutes on a bum hamstring. I'm impressed that he was even able to make it out there and be able to contribute early on. That 5 points could have ended up being huge in a tightly competitive game. Now, it turned out in this series, the last 4 games were all blowouts, including 3 by the Pacers, all by 10-plus points here. And I think that, again, just kind of speaks to the attrition factor in all this, how it's so hard with just one day in between games to turn it around, to bring it on a second straight night. And that, again, is why the Pacers had the advantage in this game. There was 2 days between games going into game 6, and I thought if the Knicks wanted to win and close out the series, they had to take game 6 because given their health situation with 4 guys out, given that Josh Hart suffered another injury, and not sure if he would even be able to play. Coming back home, sure, but to do it on their current health status and just 1 day between games, and for whatever reason, Brunson played almost till the very end of game 6. For all those reasons and more, I thought the Knicks really had to finish it out in Indianapolis in game 6, or else they were going to be in for a tough one. And that's ultimately what panned out to be in game 7. Greg Berg is celebrating. So is Logan. A lot of happy fans here. And it's cool to see that. So many of you who've been with me and follow and read my work. Like, it's great to see so many of you fans excited and enjoying this, because there have been a lot of dark moments for you Pacer fans here in recent history, right? You could go to back a decade to Paul George after that Eastern Conference Finals run. He went to Team USA, and on August 1, 2014, suffered that compound leg fracture, and the Pacers have not been the same since. They hadn't won a playoff series since until this year. Now they've won not 1, but 2. You had Victor Oladipo's injuries. You had Sabonis's injuries. Jeremy Lamb's season-ending leg fracture. Malcolm Brogdon's frequent injuries. Hate to bring up all these bad memories, but you guys have been through a lot. Edmund Sumner having multiple season-ending injuries. There's been so much, and I've repeated on the last post-game show, and I'll do it again here. The Pacer fan has been through so much. So has the team here in the last 5-6 years. I mean, this is the first coaching staff to get them back to the playoffs since Nate McMillan. You had that Nate Bjorkgren year that was unsuccessful. So I'm happy for so many of you that are enjoying this, and the weather has been fantastic. The only negative, quite frankly, of this run is it's keeping us all inside when we should all be at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway or around the pool or outside enjoying the weather. But we will not complain. We'll enjoy all of this run, because it's, for me, it's been a blast to continue to cover. I love seeing the individual development, the team camaraderie come together. So many little things like that, the growth points, little individual tweaks, right? It was Nembhard on Brunson, then it was Neesmith, and TJ McConnell would help from that department. Pascal Siakam becoming more of a vocal leader and being more of an assertive player. Those are all just some of the little things that I've been able to observe here during this playoff series in particular. Casey says Tyreek touched post-game on proving everyone wrong about a playoff race. Do you think this Pacers team could signal a shift in the line of thinking across basketball? Seems like it can stay fast. If I understand you correctly, in terms of the Pacers being on the rise, yeah, for sure. Because go back to the beginning of the season, right? The Pacers were picked to be on national TV just once. And you know what the Pacers did? They took it into their own control, and they advanced in the in-season tournament, had success there. And in doing so, they kept putting themselves in the national picture. Then it continued on into the postseason. And now every single game here in the Eastern Conference Finals is on an ESPN network. So I'll have to do the math here, but between the first, second, and third rounds, plus what they did in the in-season tournament, they're pushing now well over 25 appearances, I believe, on national TV again after just 1 at the beginning of the season. So to your point, yeah, I think it's shifting the thinking. And what really helped with that was Tyrese speeding up the process for this rebuild a little bit, and then Pascal speeding it up a little bit as well. And so it was interesting going into this regular season, and I mentioned this at the buzzer column on Fieldhouse Files, is how beginning of the year, nobody in the front office and nobody from the coaching staff even uttered the word playoffs. They didn't. What we did see was every single player, I'm tired of losing, was what Tyrese Halliburton said, coming off his Team USA performance, which was disappointing for him and the rest of us, right? Seeing them not win, we expect that. He said, I'm tired of being a loser. I've done all I can do. I got in terms of individual recognition, right? He's been an all-star. He got a max contract last July, and that doesn't kick in till July 1 upcoming. So he's still on his rookie year and doing all this, just 24 years old. So his best should be yet to come, right? And so all those players in training camp, I think they had a great, successful little players-only mini camp down in Nashville, led by Tyrese and Bruce Brown in particular. I'll have to contact Buddy Hield. I'm very curious what Buddy Hield thinks watching all of this from afar. Seeing all his guys succeed and probably a little bit disappointed. honestly, that he's not part of it after all of this. Clark says, Scott, any chance we get the checkered T-shirts again for 3 or 4? One of my favorites. Wow, Clark, we haven't seen that probably since 2012, I want to say. I'll check on it. I'm going to say no, only because they have leaned in heavily to this gold out theme. That's what they've done at every home game, and the Pacers have continued to wear yellow jerseys, their statement edition uniforms, for every single playoff game. So I'm not sure why you would change it now. Thanks again, everyone, for jumping on this live post-game show. Kimono, appreciate your $10 donation, I guess, if you will, to Fieldhouse Files and to me for all my coverage. I appreciate that. Every little thing counts. So thank you, my friend. Granny Danger, oh my God, what a game, he says. Biggest pop of the game at the bar was when they showed Spike Lee. Yeah, I believe that. And that in large part is why I included that in my post-game column. That's kind of the main graphic, because that is how Pacer fans have felt for the last 10 years, basically. And so to see someone else do that, to see the arch rival feel that way, has got to make Pacer fans feel some way. I don't think this is a rivalry just yet. Pacers just won their first playoff series against the Knicks here in recent history. For a rivalry to become one, you got to see the Knicks knock the Pacers off now in the postseason, in my opinion. MK Singh says the crew at Cambridge has their work cut out with Pacers and Fever. Yeah, they sure do. Swapping courts, keeping the building nice, all those different things. But that is a good problem to have. The other thing I've thought about is what a year now for Herb Simon of the Pacers, as before the season sold an additional 15% of the franchise. So a little excess money in his pockets right now. Then you host Indy's All-Star Weekend. Fantastic for him and all of us. Then you have Tyrese Halliburton become an all-star. Fantastic. He goes into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, named a finalist, and then named an inductee, and his enshrinement will be coming up this fall, I believe in October now. And now his team's having the most successful season that it has since 2014, back in the conference finals for the third time in 11 years. So can't help but think what his emotions might be at this point. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Hell of a win, says R. Smith. Controlled from start to finish, weathered all the storms. Exactly. Yep. Led early, led late, several storms. Well said. Will Boston media find it difficult to get a hotel room? Yes, they will. Yeah, I've had some national reporters tell me they've already booked the rooms just in case. And that was a couple weeks ago, before this series really got started in earnest, just in case. Because of the challenges that come with having the Indy 500 here, that's going to make those hotel prices skyrocket. No doubt about that. Respect to the Knicks for playing hard all season, but they were up 2-0 and then 3-2 on the Pacers. Pacers held strong after game 1, and then game 5 blowout showed a ton of heart for sure. Yeah, and so much of the Knicks is just not being at full strength. I mean, they were down to finish this series today. They were out 4 of their top 5 scores and still were within 7 in the third quarter. I thought they showed tremendous fight and hustle and heart. And selfishly, I would have liked to see more of this Knicks team and to see them at full strength. It's definitely a team I'll be closely watching in the offseason and going into next year to see what they look like, what moves they made. Can they be a threat here in the Eastern Conference behind the Celtics? And who knows what the Milwaukee Bucks look like. The Pacers have thrusted themselves into that conversation. Obviously, there will be extension talks with Pascal Siakam as well. That's why you acquire him. So it makes for a more interesting Eastern Conference when it's more than just the Celtics. Love the subplot here. Toppin against his former team. Victorious next is Nesmith against his former team. Yeah, those are good points. I thought Obi Toppin had a very good series, and I should single out Aaron Nesmith because so much of what he was dependent on was defense this series, but he went out with a bang offensively here tonight. 8 for 8, 19 points for what he was able to do. It was incredibly impressive on top of what he did defensively in 28 minutes of work. So 19 points, made all 8 of his shots, did Aaron Nesmith in today's Pacers win 130-109. You knew if the Knicks were going to have a chance at winning, it was going to be more of a low-scoring game. It was just surprising in which the level of offense the Pacers were able to display. Even Tyrese 2 nights ago after Game 6 over here at the Fieldhouse was joking how historically, and he's a student of the game, how historically Game 7s are ugly. They're rough and tough. They're physical. They're low scoring. And so he was expecting to have to win ugly, but that was not at all the case. They led by double digits for most of the game, by as many as 23, and it never trailed by more than a possession. And that was very early on in the game, I think, after OG Anunoby's made three-pointer a couple minutes in. Michael says, and it's all earned. Yeah, I think you're talking about all the attention and national TV stuff I was just talking about a little bit earlier. Yeah, no doubt. R. Smith says, I wish Buddy was here as well. Damn. Tell the truth. So proud of how they showed up, overcame the refs. Yeah, they overdid. They did that in the first couple of series, no doubt. And that's why it's so important to keep composed. And after that 0-2 start, not lose their way, because you really didn't lose anything in all, because you come back home, and if you hold your ground, then things are even once again. And that's exactly what this youthful Pacers team did. And this team's learning so much on the fly right now that it's going to pay dividends here coming up in the next few years, I believe, because this still, I will say, they've exceeded my expectations, but they've also done that because they've benefited from poor health on the other teams. But the Pacers have been in a good spot, and it's about time that they've had some good luck with their health. The only real problem that they've had is Benedict Mathurin out for the season with injury. Tyrese clearly is not 100%. Several players aren't either. No one's 100% at this point in the season, quite frankly. So it's just overcoming what your odds are and playing your best game. And I think the Pacers have done a very commendable job in what they have done to overcome their circumstances and beat the opposing teams. Jeffrey says, most composed I've seen since this team, since we moved into 2024. Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. That was the big interest and surprise for me, because I thought they'd be a little panicky. Like, we all remember game one in Milwaukee, right? When they got blown out, and they were just deer in headlights, stunned in the moment, uncomfortable, unsure of themselves. And I thought today was the complete opposite. Eased into it first couple of minutes. Knicks took an early lead, but then that's when the Pacers went off, made 10 of their first 11 shots, shot 76% in that first quarter. We're moving the ball. At one point, I think had 14 assists, while the Knicks had just 12 field goals total. And so things were humming out there. And I think the number one factor in all that is TJ McConnell and what he does. But then in addition to that, they were sharing the wealth. No one dominated the ball. They stuck to the game plan, got stops defensively. Yeah, you're right, Jeff. So much to like about the team's poise and how they handled themselves in a high pressure moment with all the eyes watching. This wasn't on TNT or even ESPN. This was on ABC. So you didn't need a cable subscription to watch this one, which I'm sure was seen probably by, I'll guess 5.5 million will be the number that we'll get here in the next couple of days. But I'm very curious to see that. Alex says, thoughts on the ESPN broadcast? Very disappointing. And I'm mainly talking about NBA Countdown and halftime shows and all that, because I don't care to see anyone being a fan of a team. I want analysis about the game. And pregame, all it was basically the Stephen A. Smith show, talking about how he's a Knicks fan and giving them a pep talk and watching him walk into the arena. I mean, if I were you fans at home, I'd be infuriated. That's the last thing I want to hear about. I want to hear both sides. What's going to help the Knicks win in this game? How can they overcome perhaps OG Anunoby's injuries? And if you're from the Pacers standpoint, what will it take to win on the road? What's it like? Maybe lean on someone who's been in there. Maybe Michael Wilbon or Bob Myers, who's been into the Garden in a high stakes environment. That's the discussion you want, not making it about yourself. And I really don't like media that roots for teams and outwardly is pissed about losses or is thrilled with wins. I like the even keel, the analysis, the honest perspective from both sides. Like today, you can say Dante DiVincenzo had a fantastic effort, that he scored 39 points, that Jalen Brunson was trying to tough it out despite not being 100%. You can say all that while also giving the Pacers credit for what they did. And I thought at the end of the game too, there was too much discussion about what the Knicks had fought through and their challenges, instead of celebrating the Pacers season, their improbable run now to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think there's got to be a better balance, especially when you're trying to cater to two different audiences and everything, as well as the casual fan that probably does not know much about the Pacers. That this might be their introduction to the team. So to say the least, it left a lot to be desired out there. Casey says, better rephrasing of my previous question. Do you think the Pacers might make the league change on being able to play fast in the playoffs? Tyrese seemed to prove that in the presser. It just all comes down to, I don't know. It's all dependent on the series, right? And with this Knicks, you had to, because of their lack of depth. And so that's what helped them win, was they tired them out. It was the war of attrition. I hate to keep repeating myself, but that's what worked against a more healthy team. Maybe it doesn't. A team that's not down 4 of their final 5 starters. I think it does maybe give you more to think about, rather than for all of us to default, hey, rotations are trimmed and the game slows down and it's more in the half court. But the reality is, in general, it does. I even look at fast break points here. Pacers were outscored 17-11, and we're all praising them for what they did on the run and such. So it's not quite as obvious. I think you need more of a sample size to describe what's going on there. Jeff says Pacers definitely grew up today, for sure. Yeah, very young team, and the best learning tool is going through it together, and that's what they did here. MK Sinks, any idea if the team is headed straight to Boston for game 1? Yes, they are. The team is going right straight to Boston. No point to come to Indy here. By the time you get here, it's 10 p.m., and then you'd leave again at 1 p.m. So you pack for 3 games, right? You tell your team, hey, we're going for 3 games, and so that's what they did here. Pacers went midseason tournament final, and now the Eastern Conference Finals. Let the media disrespect them, we believe. I don't think there's as much disrespect as it's more gushing over the Knicks. It's not as though they're putting the Pacers down. It's just they want to talk about the other team. And I will say, what is ESPN? It is an analytic company. What do more people want to talk about on a numbers basis? The Lakers. That's why even when they're irrelevant, like right now, there will still be conversations about them nationally because more people will tune in. Studies and numbers say that. I didn't feel any disrespect to the Pacers from the broadcast today. More so, it's just further the discussion on the Knicks because that's what they wanted to talk about, which I thought was a bad error on their part. Zach says, Halliburton echoing Big Roy in the presser, basically telling the media, you didn't cover us. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Not surprised. There's only 3 of us that were there every single day. You only have one of the 4 indie TV stations that thought it was worth their time to go out to New York to cover this series. So even locally, you'd like to see more investments, but it also is in combination with what the team allows and that partnership. And that's not as always as easy or transparent as you might expect. GS400 says, glad it was a blowout. A close game at MSG with the refs in their corner would have been bad. Why would you say with the refs in their corner? I don't think the refs were bad one way or the other today. I know the default thinking is that, but no reason I think that. Just Be You says, ESPN about to rehire Bill Simmons after Stephen A. rallying cries fall short. Well said there. That's pretty funny right there. Michael B., I hope 10 years from now we have a 30 for 30 on this new rivalry. Perhaps, but it needs to have a couple more years in the making. This is just year 1, not a rivalry just yet, but it could be one. A lot of young guys. I mean, the Halliburton-Brunson exchange and that matchup. You got to love the Villanova-Knicks storyline. I sure do. I don't know about you. I love how hard they play. And I thought, quite honestly, their experience winning big games would give them the upper hand because, for example, Tyrese has never won the big game in college. They never really played big games there, didn't win any big games in Sacramento. Here with the Pacers this season, they lost the in-season tournament final to the Lakers. So that's what this season's really about, is discovery, figuring out what they have, gelling, getting that team chemistry to then make a push next season. I thought next year they would have a chance at pushing perhaps to the conference finals. This year, I thought if Milwaukee was healthy, you're probably looking at a tough 6 or 7 game series that would have gone Milwaukee's way just because of, having 2 Hall of Famers in Lillard and Giannis, but again, health. But that's just an excuse. And the Pacers weren't making excuses. They were just winning their matchup and did quite well in doing so. What else do we got? Early matchup predictions. Neesmith on Tatum. I'd have to give some thought to that. I have not given it serious thought just because you've had Pacer game every other day with Fever game as well. And so now after this and after my next story, I'll probably turn my attention to that series in earnest. That's where I wish there were more days between games. Basically, it's every other day now going into the second round. And here's where the Pacers could make the excuse of, hey, they're on short rest. The Boston Celtics haven't played since Wednesday. They're going to be rested. They're going to be at home. They're going to have the home court where they were dominant all season. Pacers have been playing every other day. They're going to be tested in game one coming up on Tuesday night with all the games starting late night after 8 p.m. on the ESPN family of networks. And if you haven't seen the full schedule, I have it in my column at fieldhousefiles.com. What else we got? Missed the calls of Chris and Quinn. Yeah, you missed that familiarity with the regional sports network. You do. But you do have Mark Boyle on radio, which you can turn to, by the way. So don't forget about that. Key matchup next series, McConnell versus Pritchard. I'm not sure if you're serious or not, quite frankly. MK Singh says early look at game 3 is tickets above $280 with fees. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. These are not going to come cheaply. There's going to be a lot of people wanting in to attend these games because Fieldhouse has not hosted conference finals games since 2014. It's been a long time. Little late, but do you know the date of the first home game? Yeah, Mike, it's all on fieldhousefiles.com, but it's on Saturday and Monday with the Indy 500 on Sunday. So that will be the first home game. Kyle says it every other day. Yeah, as I was saying, basically, but you can check out the full schedule. I'm curious as to how they will approach game 1 in Boston. The first game of our last 2 series has been more of a feeling out. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's probably what it'll be like, right? Especially on short rest, especially being on the road. I think you're looking to carry in the momentum. If you're the Pacers, the message you're enforcing and reiterating to the team is, hey, look, we don't have any rust. We're going right in. Everybody's going to count us out. We can play with this Boston team. We did quite well against them during the regular season. Let's keep that up. We just set a historic field goal percentage, 67.1%. Let's top that. Let's be even better. And so I think that's what you're looking at if you're the Pacers. You're trying to find ways to encourage and keep things high and not thinking about the lack of rest and those sort of things. Pacers don't have anyone on their injury report except for Benedict Mathurin. So all things considered, this late into the season, they're doing quite well health-wise. Scott, any inside scoop on how motivated Nesmith will be for the series? Just as motivated as anyone. He has no ill will towards the Celtics. It was just a depth issue, and the Celtics had too much out on the wing, and so he could never get in there. Now he's going to play a big factor, regardless of the fact that he was a former Celtic. It's a very different situation than was Obi Toppin, whereas Toppin was traded away from the Knicks. They wanted him gone. He had disagreements with the coaching staff, and they basically moved him to the Pacers for a second-round pick. So there was obvious annoyance, frustration. You didn't believe in me. He's in the final year of his rookie deal. On the other side, Nesmith, who, by the way, again, 8 for 8 today with a 19-point performance, his best of these postseason. He got moved for the better, I think is how he's got to think of it. He misses his old friends. He liked his situation in terms of people and such in Boston. But by moving on to Indy, he had a role. He was believed in by Rick Carlisle and the staff. Same thing previously with Jalen Smith, although that's interesting now, right? Tyrese Halliburton, he became the face of the Pacers coming here. Victor Oladipo, Domantas Sabonis, so many of those trades, and that's what the Pacers look for. That's where they try to believe their advantage is going and get guys that are underwhelmingly used or out of position, give them an opportunity and see what they do with it. And so I don't think there's a revenge factor in play for Nesmith as much as there is a great familiarity for him. He's a Charleston guy, so it's not going back home like it was for Obi Toppin, who's from New York, by the way. So already going to New York, being drafted there, he had that additional pressure of playing at home, which in talking with players over all my years covering the league, you don't want that early on in your career. You don't mind it later once you've already established a family and you fall apart from some friends. But those first few years, man, you got a lot of hangers on. You got friends from high school and middle school hitting you up and random texts from friends, going way back for different things. One day between games, I think, benefits the Pacers. Here's hoping there's some rust on the Celtics. And I'm not sure it benefits the Pacers. Where it might here is if you're talking about Kristaps Porzingis. I'm not sure if he'll be available for game one. That's obviously something Pacers will have to keep in mind here. We'll be curious what that looks like. My initial thought is that he won't be available for the first couple games, but I did see my buddy Jared Weiss of The Athletic post a video today on his social media that Porzingis was on a stationary bike riding, so there's a lot of movement. It's not like he's completely resting and not doing anything. So that will be something we'll keep an eye on in this series. But every team's dealing with some kind of injury. With this next matchup, it's Drew Holiday, it's Jason Tatum, and it's Jaylen Brown in particular. Appreciate everyone joining on to this Fieldhouse Files post-game show. It's the largest, most attended one that we have had here. Maybe it speaks to the lack of interest in the national post-game show as well, by the way. We try to provide an unbiased but Pacer-centric post-game show right here. And if you want to listen to this or any previous ones, you can do so on YouTube or on the Fieldhouse Files podcast. I do them all at 2 times speed, so I recommend you do that as well for all your podcasts. Let's look. A lot of questions filing in. I'm trying to keep up with all of them right here. Kyle says, I think every other day will allow for the Pacers to take a couple of games. I think you see the Celtics take a game or two off, thinking they can just turn it on. Perhaps. I don't know. This Celtics team is tough. They're motivated. They're coming off with some rest, and they got a lot of experience, especially with Porzingis, with Holiday, with Horford. I'm hesitant to make any grand conclusions about their mindset or mentality like that. This is a determined group wanting to prove others wrong, wanting to get back to the finals and seeking the title. It's not going to be easy. It feels like the winner of, I think, the game 7 that's going on probably right now that I'm anxious to watch too is Minnesota and Denver. It feels still like the winner of that series is going to win it all, pending health, obviously. But the Celtics want to prove otherwise and will obviously be favored in this series. Initial thought feels like Celtics in 5, maybe 6, but probably 5. But it could go a long way. We'll see. Next weekend will be a lot of fun with game 3 and 4 in Indy, along with the Indy 500. Let's see here. Who's we? You picked the Knicks a couple times. Dodd, can you ask your question again, please? Michael says, you go me sub. I'm not sure a lot of these questions. You go me sub. And like, I just bought 5. I don't know what that means. Something about a hat. RC at home says, I'm happy the Pacers dominated, but satisfied, not quite. I mean, why would any of them be satisfied? Yeah, exactly. Not at all. Neither the Pacers or Celtics are satisfied at this point. No way. Isaiah Jackson better bring his lumber. That's funny. He's played good. I'll give him credit. I mean, a guy that was seldom played during the regular season, now was asked to play in the postseason, be the backup center today, playing 10 minutes, made all 3 of his shots, 9 points, and a rebound, did his work. I thought he was really good, and he's just in his 3rd year. You can't undervalue these minutes for a young guy like him. I mean, he's, 21? Think how he'll be in 2 or 3 years. Donnie Walsh taught me a long time ago that don't write off players for 3 years, and bigs need even more time. So Isaiah is only in his 3rd year. You got to give him at least 2 or 3 more years, I think, to establish and learn what he is exactly. Dallas is Rick Carlisle's old team would like to when it's alt. Would like to when it alt. I don't understand some of these writings. Make sure you read your comments before submitting them. I think he's saying Dallas would like to win the finals too. Yeah, of course they would. But I can't imagine Dallas getting past either Minnesota or Denver. I was part kidding, but I do think the Pritchard versus McConnell is one of the important matchups about the bench. Yeah, perhaps. But this is going to come down to how good is Brown, Tatum, Holiday. And on the other side, how good is Halliburton and Siakam? Yes, the bench will matter. It clearly mattered in this series, and that's what we figured. If the Pacers won this series, it was because of their depth and that they had success and they won those minutes. Again, TJ McConnell went back in with the 3rd quarter. It was about 6 minutes left as the Knicks shrunk the lead to 7. It was 77-70. He went back in there, and right away, the Pacers answered with a 16-4 run, which I thought was really impressive, a huge response. And from that moment, the Pacers never trailed by or never led by less than double digits. So that was a key marker. To me, that was the turning point in the game. The Pacers scored 39 first quarter points. They shot 67% from the field. They kept the Knicks to 42%. And despite DiVincenzo going off for 39 points, the Pacers held strong and came away with the win. Any other questions here before I wrap up this one? I want to get to my next story and watch the end or the other game coming up here out west. But Pacers get the win tonight. Impressive feat for them to go into MSG and come away with that win. Unkus says, turn me up. He's a little bit excited. Yeah, for sure. I get that with Pacer fans, man. It's been a long time coming. You haven't had much to celebrate. You've had several coaching changes. You've had several stars ask out. You've had several stars get injured. Victor Oladipo is still out of the league due to injury. Then you had a guy that you could believe in Tyrese, but a team not quite good enough. You continued to add to it. You suffered through the last few seasons where at the end of the year, they understandably wanted to lose games to have a better draft position. Then they went and in the draft lottery made their pick. And yet here you are in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. And your last three top picks, again, Chris Duarte, Benedict Mathurin, and Jarris Walker aren't contributing at all during this Pacers postseason run, which should be partly a disappointment, yet at the same time gives you optimism for moving forward with a healthy Mathurin and to see what Jarris Walker can do after this rookie season. So this Pacers team, they were excited to make the playoffs. That was the ultimate goal this season. So now they have easily exceeded all expectations under Rick Carlisle and his staff in year 3. Remember, before the season, that coaching staff all signed contract extensions. So not only was that a special moment for them, but they've earned it now this season, right? With what they have been able to get accomplished. There's times where certain things I don't understand, or maybe I disagree with, but that's going to happen. Mostly it goes to in terms of substitutions or like TJ McConnell not finishing the first couple of games. I did not understand that, but we see here in the third quarter how huge he came up for the Pacers in this one. Logan says, great coverage, Scott, as always. Yep, appreciate it. Good deal, man. Thanks for following along, and hope you're over on my Substack as well. A lot of Pacer stuff, a lot of Fever and Caitlin Clark stuff as well. So it was an incredibly busy time. If the Pacers weren't in action right now, I would have been out at the track over the last couple of days, and there probably would have been some Pacers out there as well. But now that they're in the conference finals, I don't think they'll be involved at all with the race, with the 500 Festival Parade next Saturday. Nope, it'll be all basketball for the Pacers. Now, you do have Tamika Catchings, the Hall of Famer, who will be the Grand Marshal of the 500 Festival Parade. But this week is always a special one leading into Memorial Day weekend here in Central Indiana. Do you think this helps Pascal come back this summer? Sure, but all indications were Pacers and Pascal would figure it out as long as the number was something both parties were good with. So I don't think this really changes too much. If anything, a quick bow out, I think, in the first round. And if he played poorly and didn't get the ball, that could hurt his chances. But there's no reason for discouragement on the Pascal front. It just really comes down to how much will the Pacers have to pay. But again, the Pacers can pay him more than any other team. They can offer him more years than any other team. Remember back in the early 2000s when no one could hit a 15-footer? The NBA has changed. Yeah, so much. Oh, so much. The pace, the lack of physicality, even more so now. No doubt about that. The threes. And to win this series, the Pacers haven't even shot it that great from three-point land. Tonight, they made 13. So did the Knicks. Of those, DiVincenzo made 9 of them. But it's not like the Pacers had a 23-point night. Or that they had to make 18 in every game or anything like that. They had good balance. And tonight was a good example of that. They scored 52 points in the paint, made 13 threes. I haven't talked about rebounding. Let's see the final number, 33-28. So the rebounding battle won out ultimately. The team that won rebounds won every game in this series. And so that's a telltale point, I think, about this game and about this matchup. Just be you. Is Andrew already a top 10 pick in the redraft? Probably off the top of my head. I'd give it another year. If you're going to do a redraft, like I said, give it 3 years. But what a great deal getting Nesmith at the first pick of that second round. The duo of Mathurin and Nembhard in that draft kind of resembles to me the 2010 year when you got Paul George at 10 and I think Lance Stevenson at 40, a first and second that could have significant impact on this franchise today and moving forward. And yeah, I agree with a couple of you in the comments. He is a max-ish player. I could see him maybe sign for an additional year and get a little less than the max and of his max, but I'm fully expecting a $200+ million deal for Pascal and for him to stay right here in Indy. There's nothing that has given me the indication otherwise. But what a day for the Indiana Pacers. On to the Eastern Conference Finals. They're not returning here to Indianapolis. Nope. They are going straight to Boston as that series will get underway in basically 48 hours from now. So it's a quick turnaround. They're going to need that massage therapist. They're going to need the recovery tools and all those different things, their physical therapists and all that different stuff to get tuned up for Tuesday's game. But we were enjoying a really good one here today at Madison Square Garden. Just a special place, a place that the players just love playing significant games or just in general because of the crowd, the electricity, the environment. And I name one thing that's cool that MSG does is during the timeouts, they highlight at least a couple of their stars, celebrities in the crowd. And I have a full list of those on my post-game story as well. And they're significant names too, especially if you enjoy movies and TV shows and such, in addition to the former Knicks, a couple of Giants, all those different things. That's one cool thing about games at MSG. But I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. It's almost 8:00 here on Sunday. Pacers take Game 7 to end the series, winning 4 of their final 5 games. It's on to Boston Tuesday to begin the Eastern Conference Finals. I'll continue to have all the coverage for you right here on YouTube, on fieldhousefiles.com, on the Fieldhouse Files podcast. It's my 12th year covering this team. This will be my 3rd Eastern Conference Finals. And so maybe I can tap into some of those old school Pacers and see what they have to say about this new group reaching the conference finals. I think that would be a lot of fun. It's been cool to see a lot of those alums being active right now. But I appreciate everyone joining me, and I'll have several more podcasts and many more stories to come at fieldhousefiles.com. Thanks again for joining, and I'll talk to you again soon.